Welcome back to another day on Eos Island, y'all. Altron here. Today on the island, I'm bringing you a comprehensive beginner's guide to Venusaur for Season 6 in Pokemon Unite. As usual, in this guide I will be talking about the Pokemon's basic playstyle, abilities, items and builds, as well as synergies with other Pokemon, and some basic tips against some of the meta picks right now. Venusaur is an attacker-type Pokemon and is unique in that it can function as both a melee attacker or a ranged sniper, depending on the build. Venusaur's ability to dual function can keep enemies on their toes, but Venusaur's real strength comes from the ability to deal consistent damage regardless of the move choices. If Petal Dance and Giga Drain are chosen, Venusaur can function as a consistent AoE damage tornado with incredible sustain. Conversely, if Solar Beam is chosen, Venusaur operates more similarly to a sniper, potentially dealing heavy burst damage to groups of enemies. Venusaur's empowered basic attack is very strong, and is one of the main sources of consistent damage that Venusaur can deal to enemies within his attack radius. It's important to know your role as Venusaur, because the abilities that you choose will alter the role significantly. If you opt for the Petal Dance and Giga Drain build, your role is now a melee-oriented attacker that deals significant AoE damage with a decent sustain. You should be in the chili of a team fight with your defenders and all-rounders to help take the heat off some of the squishier targets, since the more enemies you nail with Giga Drain, the better your sustain will be. It is also important to realize that while you have a pretty significant sustain, without defender or all-rounder assistance, you'll be a pretty easy target for the enemy team to blow up. So make sure you aren't trying to solo tank for your team, you're just too squishy for that. If you instead pick up Solar Beam, then your role changes to a max range sniper. By significant contrast, you'll need to play Venusaur way more safely than the melee build, and be fully aware of your surroundings and situation at all times. This Venusaur trades mobility for huge burst damage, so if this is your playstyle, then make sure you're standing safely to the back of a team fight and lay down as many Solar Beams as possible. Know your outs and make sure that you are nearby a teammate that can provide peel if you get dove. Venusaur is so resilient it can thrive in any lane. You can run it on top, bottom, or in the jungle if you really need to. But Venusaur truly thrives in the bottom lane where it can be a lane bully against your lane opponents. Plus, there are probably better options to run in the jungle anyway.
Bulbasaur's basic attack becomes boosted with every third attack, whipping forward with vines from his body, dealing increased damage and pulling enemies in towards the middle of the vines. Bulbasaur's first ability is Seed Bomb. Bulbasaur hurls a large seed to the designated location, damaging all enemies within the radius.
Seed Bomb is, honestly, one of the worst moves in the game. It deals a tiny amount of damage and offers no additional effects except that it hits all enemies in its tiny low radius when it lands. You should be throwing this as often as possible, but it forces you to stop to cast it, so don't get yourself killed while launching it. It's not going to confirm KOs or farm very often.
Bulbasaur's second ability is called Razor Leaf. Bulbasaur launches a barrage of sharp-edged leaves in the designated direction, damaging enemies 10 times over 0.75 seconds.
Razor Leaf is Bulbasaur's area denial of choice. It has a small wind-up time, and the major drawback to using it is that you're stuck in place while channeling it for its entire duration. However, it trades these drawbacks for good damage if you can trap an enemy inside for the majority of its duration. The typical combo is to nail an enemy or two with a boosted basic attack to whip them in together and then throw a Razor Leaf on top of them and cause them to back off. This combo is a fair amount of damage, so it usually will be able to force enemies back to the goal zone.
At level 5, Bulbasaur evolves into Ivysaur and has the ability to upgrade Seed Bomb into either Sludge Bomb or Giga Drain. Giga Drain causes Venusaur to emit a cone-shaped blast in the designated direction, damaging enemies and restoring health when it hits. Venusaur also takes 35% reduced damage for 2.5 seconds. At level 11, Venusaur is able to upgrade this ability into Giga Drain Plus, increasing the amount of healing.
Giga Drain is a great survival move for Venusaur, who is otherwise very squishy. Not only does it regain some HP when you hit something with it, but it also reduces the damage you take by a good amount for a short amount of time to help you escape if you do get dove on. but it's a dead move if the enemy team doesn't have a way to get to you in the backline if you're running Solar Beam, so make sure you're aware of the situation before just auto-selecting it. With Petal Dance, this move is what enables you to deal tons of constant damage by stealing life from opponents and decreasing the damage you take to stay in the fight longer. It is important to note this ability is more important than spamming your basic attack while in a team fight. The cooldown is shortened by the amount of enemies that Petal Dance ticks on, so make sure that you are alternating your Giga Drain, Auto Attack, and Petal Dance effectively, making sure that you are using Giga Drain on cooldown. Otherwise, your DPS will go down a lot, as will your sustain.
Sludge Bomb causes Venusaur to hurl toxic sludge to a designated location, damaging and poisoning all enemies in the radius when it lands. The sludge lingers, damaging enemies every 0.5 seconds for 5 seconds in the radius, slowing them by 45% and reducing their special defense by 30% for 1 second. At level 11, Venusaur is able to upgrade this ability to increase the ability's radius.
Sludge Bomb is actually a pretty solid move for Venusaur. Not only does it do a fair amount of damage on impact, it also slows and shreds special defense, which helps enable Solar Beam to deal more damage itself. It's also nice to have an ability to throw into a team fight that you can forget about and just keep throwing it because the cooldown is pretty short. If you run this move, make sure to throw it first, if possible, to shred and slow before nuking them with Solar Beam. It's not recommended to run this move with Petal Dance, since you'll have no sustain and you'll likely just get smashed without getting the full value from Petal Dance.
At level 7, Ivysaur is able to upgrade Razor Leaf into Solar Beam or Petal Dance. Petal Dance causes Venusaur to scatter petals around themselves for 4.8 seconds, increasing movement speed by 90% and damaging all enemies in the radius every 0.3 seconds. This movement speed increase slowly decays during the duration of this move by 9% every half second. Petal Dance reduces the cooldown of Sludge Bomb or Giga Drain by 30% of the current remaining cooldown per tick of damage that hits an enemy player. The more enemy players hit, the more the cooldown is reduced. At level 13, Venusaur is able to upgrade this ability into Petal Dance Plus, increasing the radius of the ability.
Petal Dance turns Venusaur into a life-stealing race car frog, and one of the benefits of this move is that you can almost freely reposition during combat to a more advantageous position within the team fight. Or you can just run around in circles, making it really difficult to hit you. You can also use this ability to disrupt the backlines of a team fight by rushing the mages or ranged support Pokemon and disrupting their rotations on the death ball of the team fight. This ability also makes Venusaur one of the better Pokemon at escaping from disadvantageous situations, as your mobility goes through the roof.
Solar Beam causes Venusaur to charge sunlight for 0.7 seconds before firing a beam of light in a designated direction, damaging enemies 5 times over 0.3 seconds. This ability also deals bonus damage directly to the enemy's maximum HP, up to 1.5% per tick. At level 13, Venusaur is able to upgrade this ability into Solar Beam Plus, reducing the cast time to 0.6 seconds and cooldown by 2 seconds.
Solar Beam does incredible amounts of damage to enemies, and it hits especially hard against defenders and all-arounders. Venusaur's empowered basic attack synergizes well with Solar Beam, as it vine whips the target and nearby enemies, stunning them and pulling them all in towards the center of the vines, allowing you to follow it up with a massive Solar Beam hit. Solar Beam requires you to maintain a safe distance at the back of a team fight though, since Venusaur forgoes all mobility by taking this. However, the range of Solar Beam is quite long, and it even extends off the visible play area, so you can nail targets that you can't even see. This ability requires good map awareness, and either a quick map flick, or the ability to read the mini-map to predict how to fire this ability. Solar Beam is the trickier of the two upgrades from Razor Leaf to use, which is why many players don't like to pick it up. It's not necessarily a bad move, but it can put you in a precarious situation if you get jumped by a diver, as you have no mobility and very little self-peel.
At level 9, Ivysaur evolves into Venusaur and gains access to Venusaur's Unite ability, Verdant Anger. Verdant Anger causes Venusaur to hurl a massive seed to a designated location, damaging all enemies within the radius and slowing them by 35% for 1 second. The seed then splits into 4 smaller seeds, each damaging all enemies hit within the radius.
Fervent Anger is a decent ultimate, dealing a fair amount of damage and slowing enemies for a short amount of time, but this move is strongest when trying to ninja objectives. It's also a good engagement tool for Petal Dance Venusaur and can be used to pepper the team from a safe distance as if you're using Solar Beam Venusaur. It's an okay ultimate overall. It's not one of the best, but it's also not one of the worst. Pretty middle of the road as far as Unite moves are concerned. The basic item build for Venusaur varies based on your playstyle. Venusaur is one Pokemon that suffers because we have to pre-build our Pokemon before seeing the enemy team composition. So it really is just based on how you feel like you want to play prior to the match start. Petal Dance Venusaur builds typically run Muscle Band for better early laning and increased boosted attack DPS overall. Energy Amplifier also helps reduce the cooldowns and cycle power after engaging with your ultimate, and Buddy Barrier to raise Venusaur's survivability overall. If you find yourself struggling with early laning, you could also swap out Buddy Barrier to Focus Band to help improve early skirmishes and provide a bit more sustain later on. The basic build for Solar Beam, however, is purely cooldown based. Shell Bell for the cooldown and special attack increase, Energy Amplifier to help you with cooldowns, and to provide more burst by having your ultimate up more often, in addition to choice specs, to provide a bonus damage to Venusaur's already hard-hitting Solar Beam. But again, if you're struggling with early laning, you could pick up Focus Band to help. It does become fairly useless later on, save for some fringe examples where the small heal helps you escape a gank. But by and large, if you get dove without nearby peel, you're probably headed back to the base anyway. Emblems for Venusaur should be cooldown focused with a boost to special attack, so 7 black emblems and 6 green emblems should be sufficient. On screen is what I run. It doesn't matter too much how you get to 7 black and 6 green, just make sure you don't end up nerfing special attack too much when building the emblems. But again, the most important thing is the % cooldown reduction and the % increase to special attack. The meta right now revolves around Mr. Mime, Glaceon, and Gengar, and all of these are equally problematic for Venusaur in certain scenarios. Mr. Mime can be tricky to navigate because of Power Swap and his cavalcade of stuns, but as long as you're moving erratically with Petal Dance, it will be difficult for Mr. Mime to even land a Power Swap on you in the first place, which will neuter his damage and prevent him from neutering yours. Mime should be less of a problem with Solar Beam Venusaur because you should be well outside of his functional range, and if he does decide to chase you down, he's robbed his team of their support, and your team will have the advantage in the fight. If you do get charged by a Psycho Clown Mime thing, you should be able to kite Mime around without him getting too close to deal with you. Gengar works a lot the same way as Mime if you run Petal Dance. Just make sure you maintain maximum range as you run circles around Gengar. This will make his auto-target Hypnosis Dream Eaters miss a lot, and it'll force him to manually target, which is more than most non-dedicated Gengar players can handle. With Solar Beam Venusaur, there really isn't much you can do if you get jumped by a Gengar, since he'll likely KO you long before you can KO him. But if you know there's a Gengar on patrol, then you have to keep your head on a swivel and stay a little closer to your team for peel support. If you do see a Gengar charging you, anticipate his ability and eject button towards your team. Good players will be able to identify when Gengar is pushing and immediately swap targets to help focus him, or at least provide you an amount of peel that lets you deal with him as well. Glaceon is more of a 50-50 matchup for Venusaur. She has to be pretty close to use Icy Wind, and if she's using Icicle Spear, you can usually just walk behind a tank and let them soak the damage from it. She should be largely out of your effective range as Petal Dance Venusaur, so you really should try to avoid this engagement if possible. On the other hand, Solar Beam Venusaur should be well out of her effective range, and you can hit her pretty hard, almost certainly forcing her to disengage. Venusaur is, once again, a pretty solid and respectable selection for Season 6 on the new map. It brings unique abilities to a variety of situations and allows for multiple different playstyles for people who truly enjoy playing the Seed Pokemon. I hope this guide helps you improve your gameplay with Venusaur.
Like and subscribe for more guides in the future.
And until next time,
Good fight, good night.